the Rap Dibble Show. Ben Darnell, Adam Giardino in for Dibs. Dibs will be back on Wednesday. We get bumped tomorrow because it's a big baseball day. The Yankees will be back tomorrow. And before the Yankees get going, the UConn baseball Hook C will be back. They take on Northeastern on the road. A big game for them because they don't have many of these midweek games, and even the ones they get, it's always hard in New England to find a team that's going to actually boost your, I'm going to say it, Adam, RPI.
Oh, those three letters.
It's a three-letter word around these parts in baseball that not many pay attention to because really there's one option to get to the NCAA tournament in the world of D1 baseball, and that's to win your conference. Now, for UConn, they're on the path to do just that. However, just in case it doesn't happen, you try to build a resume worthy enough for the NCAA's party committee to put you in the big party of NCAA baseball. Now, you feel like there is a path that isn't Big East champion, an at-large path for UConn to get there. I don't think so, but go ahead and try to win me over and how you think. Let's assume they win tomorrow and they beat Northeastern. Last time I checked RPI, they're sitting at 39-40 right there. UConn at 44.
Yes, so just a couple of spots separate them. So this is a big game. You want to pick up a quad one victory. If you're UConn, you've only got two of those so far this season. One is over well, actually, I was just going to say, one is on the road. It was out on that California trip. They missed an opportunity for a quad one win against Indiana State.
Yep.
That's having another good year. Yep. Lost by a run in the second game of the season. So for UConn, an opportunity to pick up another quad one victory. And for the Huskies, the fact of the matter is that they're 12-3 in Big East play. They have a couple more Big East series left to go. One series coming up. It's against Creighton. We'll have that game for you on the radio. It's Saturday, 2 o'clock first pitch, 1:45 pregame show. And if you're able to win 5 of your last 6 in Big East play, which, I mean, UConn's won 12 of their last 14, and so you're going up against some teams that you're going to have an opportunity. You've already taken care of business against the best teams in the conference, so you've done the hard work. If you finish 17-4 in the Big East, you win the Big East by multiple games, and it's a Big East conference that is going to be talking about multiple bids this year. I just, looking at the numbers, Xavier, they have the number 2 non-conference strength of schedule. They just scheduled the heck out of themselves. They did a really good job of, well, I mean, going out and playing teams, but getting lucky in the same breath. I mean, there's luck involved with going out and hoping to find the right teams out in California and Florida that end up having really good seasons. And Xavier got the right side of that draw. Now, UConn, their non-conference strength of schedule this year is 35. They didn't try anything different this year other than the fact that they got luckier with how their opponents have since fared. But last year, their non-conference RPI was closer to 200, and this year it's 35. So for UConn, what it means, the Big East, Xavier is 29th in the RPI. UConn is 43. St. John's is 44. And again, it's all kind of rough estimates at this point. And then you've got Creighton at 60 and Georgetown, they're a little bit further down. But for UConn, if Xavier or St. John's wins the Big East tournament, and UConn doesn't go 0-2 in the Big East tournament, I think the UConn Huskies are going to be in. They're going to be somewhere between 35, right around 35 wins, which is usually a pretty good benchmark. And they're going to be playing their best baseball of the season leading up to it. So that's where it is for me, where I still see the Big East being a multi-bid league.
And again, on the air, just so people know, tomorrow, UConn baseball will take over our airwaves at Northeastern. Got them back again on Saturday. That's on our sister station, 1410 AM, 100.9 FM WPOP. That's part of the Creighton series. Then Adam, Mike Crispino, Adam Giardino, they'll be on the road at the Big East tournament with full tournament coverage. And then once the team does make the NCAA regionals, Adam and Mike will follow them from there. Now, let me put 3 points against your argument for UConn baseball getting an at-large. One being there's 4 teams, and these are some usual suspects that are in the top 25. This happened to Big East basketball, or at least the powers that be argued that this is what happened to Big East basketball and why they only got 3 teams in the NCAA tournament is because there were a lot of teams that were going to be automatic bids lose their conference tournaments, and they became at-large bids, and that took away a bunch of at-large spots in NCAA basketball. NCAA baseball, there are 4 teams that are automatically going to get in as at-larges if they do not win their conference tournaments, and they're from smaller conferences. DBAP, Dallas Baptist from Conference USA, ECU, East Carolina from the American, ISU, that's Indiana State, team you mentioned we played early in this season, and then UC Santa Barbara. If those teams don't win their conference tournaments, they're going to be stealing at-large bids from the bigger conferences in college baseball. That's my first point. My second one being, and you can argue this, and I'll listen to it, but I'm convinced the NCAA does not want to have anything to do with the Big East if they don't have to. I feel like the NCAA, since the deals were done several months ago with the monster conference of the Big Ten, the monster conference of the SEC, the somewhat monster conference of the ACC, and the somewhat monster conference of the Big 12. All of these conferences have made points to get away from the NCAA and put a lot of pressure on the NCAA to do things in ways that it benefits the entire pie, and the entire pie benefits more those conferences that I just mentioned beyond Big East and anyone else. And I feel like the NCAA will do whatever they can to make those conferences happier first than they will the Big East, making more room for at-larges from those big Power 4 conferences and less room from any at-larges such as the Big East.
Let me hit on the 3 teams you mentioned. Absolutely. East Carolina, Indiana State, those could totally be bid stealers. UConn needs to root like heck for those 2.
Yeah.
I think Conference USA, there's Louisiana Tech, which...
Right. Great program.
Ruston, Louisiana has hosted regionals before. They're a very good program. They're kind of in that mid-40s cut of RPI. So if it's Dallas Baptist and Louisiana Tech in a championship game there, I think they're both getting in.
Right.
Not as much of a bid stealer, but your point about ECU and Indiana State, those 2 teams, there are a lot of teams around the country that are going to be rooting big for both of those teams to take care of business in their conference tournament. Those 2 are in the top 14 of the RPI. The other 12 teams in the RPI top 14 are all ACC and SEC. And to me, that is as much of a problem with the formula as it is anything else. And that's obviously a much different discussion, a much larger discussion to have for another day. But, you look at a team that's hanging around where UConn is, and Auburn's only a couple of spots back in the RPI from the Huskies. Auburn is 4-20 in conference play, and
wow,
I'd like to believe, and Auburn is mid-40s in the RPI. I would just like to believe that a UConn, a St. John's, Louisiana Tech, that they aren't going to go 4-20 in SEC play, but maybe they would. SEC is a dominant conference.
I don't think that matters. I think that they are in the SEC, and that's the only thing that matters. That the NCAA would rather keep a team with only 4 or a handful of wins in conference play versus a great team. Like, remember Fairfield just got the at-large because they were, undefeated. They lost that final game in the conference tournament. I don't feel like the NCAA would ever grant one of those bids ever again because of what's going on with them politically, the pressure that they have with Greg Sankey in the SEC and really college football that's pushing perhaps these teams, these conferences, these brands out of the NCAA umbrella. And the NCAA is like baseball season's their last-ditch effort for the summer to kind of make these conferences happy. And I just feel like they're going to do whatever they can to make that true.
The other conference to keep an eye on is the CAA. Which is not normally, I know that perks your ears up. It's not normally Northeastern, but UNCW and College of Charleston. If you look at the Baseball America NCAA tournament projection from last week, it actually includes all 3 of those teams. It has the CAA as a 3-bid league.
Wow.
And Northeastern laid an egg on the road this week. They dropped a Friday doubleheader against North Carolina A&T. So that lowers the RPI number. It probably takes some of the shine off of Northeastern being a third at-large team. I think the CAA is now probably only a two-bid league at this point, but that still is another conference that is performing above expectations. And if Selection Monday rolls around and it's a one-bid league out of the CAA, I think that might be a bigger harbinger than anything about what the point you're trying to make and how it affects conferences like the CAA and potentially Conference USA, but also the Big East.
Now, if you're just looking at records and trying to measure out who they played, who they beat, who they lost to, neutral site, home field, away, that stuff's kind of easy to do. When you get into the nuts and bolts of things and you actually know the talent on the team, you start to ask yourself as a committee member or anyone who makes these decisions, can this team win a regional with what they have? I would like to say yes for UConn baseball, but this is where I ask you, do they have the pitching in order to win a regional? Because everything that I am seeing, they do not trust what's in their bullpen. This past weekend with the pitchers that they used went pretty far. They've been using Garrett Coe like he's going out of style, like they got to get every single ounce they can before he finally graduates. He's got to be, as far as usage goes, one of the tops in the entire nation. Do they have enough pitching, Adam Giardino? Forget it if they're going to make it. Let's say they make it. Do they have enough pitching to win a 4-team double elimination tournament on a weekend?
So for Garrett Coe, he's gone into the 8th inning in his last 3 Big East starts and just got some midweek work against Hofstra. I mean, it's a guy that Jim Penders has joked off air about, but saying, he can throw 7 innings. And then they do all of the flexibility measurements and get all the analytics, and it comes back biometrically, and it says, yeah, he's ready to go again today. And it's just such a unique guy where he is so big, he does not throw that hard, and he's just built for that. So trusting that technology, yeah, Garrett Coe goes pretty darn deep into games. Ian Cook is the X factor, and we said that before the season started, that's going to be the difference. Ian Cook went 8 2/3 innings against Seton Hall. He went 7 2/3 against St. John's. If this is a guy that can give you reliable innings in Big East play and can do it through the conference tournament, suddenly you're very excited if you're UConn about what that means on a larger stage. But Garrett Coe, Ian Cook, Stephen Quigley, conference ERA, Cook 1.93, Coe 2.93, Quigley 3.09, and that is huge. That is what these guys are doing in this stage of the season. They're trending in the right direction. But to your point, they don't have somebody, even a Brady Atham and a Braden Quinn coming out of the bullpen. They've been outstanding. Atham has given up 2 runs over 17 innings. Braden Quinn has been so different from where he was at this point a year ago. He struck out 50 batters in 30 innings, but those aren't fireballers. I mean, these aren't guys that are coming out in the typical mold where even, last year, UConn, the last seemingly decade, they have a guy that can come out and be that stopper at the end of a game.
Yeah.
And they don't have anybody coming out throwing 95. And I think that matters in a regional, and that is the part of it that does concern, where you have somebody that can just throw gas coming out of the back end of the bullpen, and they don't.
I think the other thing where a lot of people say this talk all the time around here when I'm talking NCAA baseball, and if it's Northeastern, if it's Boston College, if it's, when CCSU is doing great, when Fairfield had their run a couple of years ago, we need teams to represent all parts of the country. That's great, man. That's a great little thought. But in the NCAA world, they do not think about that whatsoever. I used to think they did, but last year's field totally proved that they didn't. I mean, for, hosting a regional, that's out the window as well. We were thinking that was a possibility last season. But, man, They kind of want warmer weather situations. They kind of want, as you said, with Louisiana Tech, teams and universities that have experience hosting this NCAA regional. So, like, the representation thing, I think, has been totally out the window in the last 5 years. And now, with the Big Ten and the SEC being mega conferences and having so much power over the NCAA, forget that talk. That ain't happening.
Well, did you focus on UConn baseball? Focus on UConn softball this week as well.
What are they doing?
They got the Big East Championship coming up starting on Wednesday.
They have to win?
They have to win. Yep, it's a one-bid league. They've
been kicking butt this year.
They finished second in the conference. Well, it was them and Creighton behind Villanova. So UConn will certainly have its work cut out for it and trying to make its way to its first NCAA tournament in over 2 decades.
I love these tournaments. I think that these things are just gems in the late months of May and obviously the beginning of June. The women's softball tournament, I think, will continue to grow along with women's basketball. Women's sports, especially in college, is just going to continue to be bonkers and grow. I see more highlights on John Boy media for women's softball now than I do just as much as Major League Baseball.
Yep.
And like, it is a fun. You get to call these games, and getting to call women's softball games versus baseball. As much as we love stealing and all that action with a guy leading off, man, those women's games, they are clicking. There's always action.
Yeah, it's awesome. And to button up on the format of softball. The softball team, so the tournament starts Wednesday. UConn finished in a tie with Creighton. As I mentioned, they own the head-to-head tiebreaker against the Blue Jays. So UConn gets the 2 seed, which if you think, oh, okay, that doesn't really mean much. Well, it's a 6-team field, so UConn avoids playing on day 1.
Okay.
The 1 and the 2 seeds get the byes. And that was all thanks to UConn had already wrapped up its season with the doubleheader on Friday, and then a game on Saturday, swept Georgetown, which they needed to do, and Providence shut out Creighton on the final day of the regular season out in Omaha, and the 2-0 victory for Providence helped UConn get the bye instead of Creighton getting the bye. So big love for Providence College as far as UConn softball is concerned, and that only helps it get easier. But yeah, softball it's an awesome sport. It's super high paced. You want every team. Sometimes you go into a game and you take a look at the numbers. You want teams that are just going to be bunting and putting balls in play and just creating chaos. It is such a quick sport, and you see if you look at the stats, you see these infielders with all the errors piled up against them, and you think, oh, they're not as talented. And it's if you juggle a ball in your glove, that's it. It's an error in the batter reaches. There's no recovery like there is in baseball where you can knock it down, pick it up, throw it. You have to be perfect on every ground ball, otherwise the runner reaches.
Coming down to crunch time, if you love a college baseball and college softball, you will be all in the next few weeks as the regular seasons are winding down. Conference tournaments will start, and Selection Monday is right around the corner. Once again, we get bumped for baseball tomorrow. UConn Northeastern, very big game for both ball clubs, and then they'll be back on our airwaves on our sister station WPOP on Saturday, taking on Creighton. So much going on in the world of sports. We're trying to hit as much as we possibly can here in this afternoon drive, but I am sure there's so many stories that are falling through the cracks. We'll try to pick them up and put them on the air next in Dibbles and Bits on the Rob Dibble Show on Fox Sports 97.9 Hartford and Fox Sports 1300 New Haven.